is Top 10 Ford concept cars of all time. And so, let's begin. Number 10, the Ford Iosis. This concept car was like a presidential candidate before election day, promising absolutely everything, looking fantastic on television. And then it all fell apart faster than a Trump press conference after a question from a journalist he doesn't like. The Iosis had everything. Aggressive headlights, body lines sharper than Joe Rogan interviews, and an interior that looked like the apartment of a guy who just signed an NBA contract and still doesn't realise he's going to buy a Tiger in 3 years. Back then, Ford said, "This is the future of our brand." The problem is, most of that future eventually turned into the Ford Mondeo. Still, this concept launched Ford's new design language called kinetic design. Sounds like something Elon Musk would name his 11th child, but it genuinely changed the look of European Fords for years. All right, number 9, and possibly the craziest idea in automotive history. The 1958 Ford Nucleon was proof that 1950s America treated nuclear energy the same way Silicon Valley treats AI today, with massive enthusiasm and absolutely no backup plan. This was a car powered by a miniature nuclear reactor. Ford promised hundreds of miles without refueling. The only small issue was that a minor parking lot accident could potentially turn an entire neighborhood into an HBO miniseries. And the best part? Back then, people thought this was a perfectly reasonable idea. This was the era of doctors advertising cigarettes and futuristic concepts that today look like concept art for the next Fallout game. To this day, the Ford Nucleon remains one of the most absurd concept cars in automotive history. Although, to be fair, if this concept debuted today, Elon Musk would probably promise full production by the end of next year. Number 8, the 1999 Ford 021C looked like a car designed by someone who had never actually seen a car before. And that's exactly why it was so interesting. At a time when everyone else was building aggressive concept cars with massive spoilers, Ford revealed something that looked more like a $4,000 designer toaster. Ford claimed this was the future of urban mobility. Back then, people laughed at it. And today, half of all new EVs look exactly like this. Smooth surfaces, screens bigger than a living room TV in 2005, and interiors as sterile as a tech company office right after firing 3,000 employees over Zoom. The funniest part is that the 021C didn't fit Ford at all. And that's exactly why people still remember it. Because it was weird, bold, and completely ignored what everyone around it expected it to be. Ford SYNus, placed number 7. This wasn't a concept car, it was a mobile bunker for people who watched way too many news channels and genuinely believed the apocalypse would begin right after a cholesterol medication commercial. Ford claimed the SYNus was designed to make people feel safe. And honestly, from the outside, it looked like it could survive riots, a hurricane, and its owner's third divorce at the same time. Tiny windows, armoured proportions, and styling that looked like a military refrigerator made the Hummer seem like a fashionable crossover for yoga instructors in California. But the funniest part is that today, the SYNus doesn't even feel that ridiculous anymore, because modern SUVs are also gigantic, aggressive, and look like they're designed to ram through traffic instead of participating in it. Ford basically created a car for people with permanent anxiety attacks about 20 years before the rest of the industry caught up. Ford Interceptor. It's time for place number 6. The Interceptor was Ford's modern interpretation of the classic muscle car. Long hood, aggressive grille, and the posture of a Las Vegas nightclub bodyguard. But the funniest part was that Ford tried to market it as modern and eco-friendly because it could run on flex fuel. Yes, a 400 horsepower V8 sedan was supposedly going to save the planet about as effectively as celebrities flying private jets to climate conferences. And honestly, it was brilliant, but it arrived a few years too late. Because right after that, America stopped dreaming about V8 sedans. and started buying SUVs the size of a small apartment in Miami. Ford Evos. Place number 5. The Ford Evos from 2011 was the moment Ford looked at the tech industry and said, what if your car knew more about you than your own wife? This was a concept from that magical era when everyone was obsessed with smartphones, Facebook still seemed harmless, and tech companies promised a future full of convenience instead of monthly subscriptions for heated seats. And the Evos looked fantastic, low, wide, and more elegant than most celebrities walking the Oscars red carpet. But the real story was the technology. The car was supposed to analyze your schedule, your driving style, and even your health condition. Ford described it as an emotional connection between car and driver. Today that sounds ridiculous, except modern cars actually do track everything with the enthusiasm of a social media app during election season. And that's what made the Evos so interesting. It didn't predict the future of Ford design, it predicted the future of the entire automotive industry. Slightly intelligent, slightly impressive, and slightly terrifying. Ford Shelby GR1, place number 4. The Ford Shelby GR1 from 2005 was one of those cars that makes you look at it and immediately think, there is absolutely no way the accountants are going to approve this. And of course, they didn't. The GR1 looked like a combination of the classic Shelby Daytona and a modern fighter jet. Long hood, pushed back cabin, perfect proportions. This car was completely ridiculous. It made no economic sense, no practical sense, and definitely no environmental sense. And that's exactly why people loved it. The GR1 came from an era when manufacturers built concept cars not to save the planet, but to look incredible on a teenager's bedroom poster. But the most painful part is that Ford never put it into production. And honestly, that's exactly why the GR1 became a legend, because nothing looks better than a car you can never actually buy. Number 3. Ford GT70. The Ford GT70 was created in the early 1970s as Ford's rally weapon. Small, lightweight, mid-engined, and shaped like something between a spaceship and a cereal box. The problem was, the GT70 arrived at exactly the moment rally racing was turning into a full-scale technology war. Ford wanted to fight Lancia and Alpine, but it was a bit like showing up to Formula One armed with a calculator and good intentions. The car never became a huge success, but that's exactly why people love it, because the GT70 wasn't perfect. It was weird, brutal, and completely impractical. Modern cars are so sterile and safe that the GT70 looks like a 1970s rock star standing next to an influencer making TikToks about productivity. Number 2. Ford Indigo. The 1996 Ford Indigo looked like Ford was trying to build a fighter jet. Until someone remembered at the last second that it probably needed wheels. Back in the 1990s, car companies made concept cars out of pure ego, and the Indigo is a perfect example of that. It wasn't practical, sensible, or even necessary. It just looked like it could do 400 kilometers per hour, even while sitting completely still at an auto show. And the best part is, a project like this would never get approved today. Before it even reached the drawing board, the marketing department would probably turn it into an electric SUV for people who talk about sporty character, but panic when they see a speed bump. But the Indigo came from a different era, an era when concept cars had one job: to make every kid want a poster of it on their bedroom wall. And finally, number 1, the Ford GT90. GT90. The 1995 Ford GT90 was exactly the kind of car only the mid-1990s could create, an era when everything had to be extreme, futuristic, and looked like the cover of a techno album bought at a gas station. This was the age of the first PlayStation, Windows 95, and sci-fi movies promising that the future would involve silver sunglasses and cyberspace. And the GT90 fit that atmosphere perfectly. The car looked like a stealth fighter on wheels, sharp lines, massive air intakes, and a silhouette so aggressive that even a Ferrari looked tame next to it, like something driven by a calm suburban dentist. Ford stuffed it with a quad-turbo V12, producing more than 700 horsepower, because the 1990s were obsessed with one simple question: what if we just add even more power? And that's what makes the GT90 so fascinating today. Back then, car companies still believed the future had to look dangerous, dramatic, and completely insane. Today, after things like the Jaguar Type 00, the future often looks more like a minimalist luxury gadget designed by a branding agency than a machine built to terrify small children at a motor show. The GT90 didn't try to be elegant or responsible. It wanted to shock people. And honestly, it still does. For decades, Ford built concept cars the same way Hollywood made blockbuster movies in the 1990s, with enormous budgets, complete insanity, and absolute confidence that more always meant better. There were atomic-powered cars like the Ford Nucleon, looking like a mobile Chernobyl for the middle class. There were futuristic monsters like the GT90 that looked like final bosses from original PlayStation games. And there were design experiments like the 021C, cars seemingly created for people who drink coffee more expensive than a monthly Netflix subscription. And that's exactly what made them beautiful. Because old Ford concept cars weren't built to satisfy emissions regulations, collect driver data, or sell subscriptions for heated seats. They had one purpose: to make people stop and say, "What the hell did they just build?" And maybe that's why old Ford concepts are still more fascinating than most modern cars, because they were imperfect, exaggerated, and sometimes completely irrational, which is exactly what the best things created by humans usually are. See you next week with another top 10 of cars that shocked the world.